The morning after my daughter's wedding, I found her husband sitting at my kitchen table in his boxers, eating the last of my good sourdough bread and watching football on my television. He didn't look up. He just reached over and turned the volume up a little louder. I stood there in the doorway in my robe, 63 years old, a retired school librarian, and I thought, this man has been my son-in-law for exactly 14 hours. That was 3 years ago. I want to tell you how it started, how it got worse than I ever imagined it could, and exactly how it ended. Because it ended, and the way it ended, well, you'll have to stay with me. My name is Louise. I raised my daughter, Nadia, alone from the time she was 9 years old, after her father passed from a heart attack that none of us saw coming. We had a small life insurance policy, a decent savings account, and a house that was paid off, a 3-bedroom craftsman in Columbus, Ohio, that I had been maintaining by myself for 34 years. I refinished the hardwood floors myself in 2009. I planted every rose bush in that front yard. I know every creak and every floorboard. Nadia grew up knowing this house was ours. Every birthday party, every sleepover, every Christmas morning, it all happened in this house. I thought she understood what it meant. She met Brandon at a work conference when she was 28. He was charming, broad shoulders, easy smile, the kind of man who makes you feel like the most interesting person in the room. I liked him at first. I did. He brought me flowers the first time Nadia introduced us, and he remembered that I liked my coffee black. They got engaged after 7 months. Fast, I thought, but I kept my mouth shut. The wedding was in April. Nadia wore a dress she found at a boutique downtown. I remember she called me from the dressing room and said, "Mom, I think I found it." When she came out in that dress, I cried. She was so beautiful. What she did not tell me until 2 days before the wedding was that she had put the dress on her credit card. $4,200 on a credit card that was already carrying a balance. I found this out because she asked me to help her make the minimum payment. I should have said something then. I know that now. Instead, I wrote the check. Because it was her wedding day. Because I loved her. Because I told myself it was just this once. It was not just this once. It was not just this once. They moved in 6 weeks after the wedding. Nadia called me on a Tuesday evening. "Mom," she said, "Brandon and I have been talking and we were thinking, just temporarily, could we stay with you for a little while? His lease is up and the apartment we want won't be available until spring." Spring was 6 months away. I said yes. Of course I said yes. She was my daughter. I set up the guest room. I cleared out half the closet in the hallway. I even bought a new shower curtain for the upstairs bathroom, the cheerful yellow one Nadia liked. They arrived on a Saturday with a moving truck. Not boxes, a moving truck. Brandon's sectional sofa, which was enormous and dark grey, arrived in my living room and displaced the wingback chair my mother had left me. I watched 2 men carry my mother's chair out to the garage, and I told myself it was temporary. The first week was fine. They were grateful, polite. Brandon fixed a loose hinge on the back door. Nadia made dinner twice. I thought, okay, this is manageable. This is family. By the 3rd week, Brandon had connected a gaming console to my television, and the setup required 4 different remotes. I could not figure out how to watch my evening news without pressing the wrong thing and getting a black screen. I started watching the news on my laptop in my bedroom. I did not say anything. By the 2nd month, his brother, a man named Cliff, who I had met once, was over at my house 4 nights a week. He and Brandon would play video games until 1 in the morning. I have a dog, a beagle named Henry, and Henry does not do well with loud noise after 10 p.m. He would scratch at my bedroom door all night. I mentioned this once, casually. "Hey Nadia, do you think the guys could maybe wrap up a little earlier on weeknights?" Nadia brought it up to Brandon. Brandon told her his brother was going through a hard time and needed the company. That was the end of the conversation. Spring came. The apartment they had been waiting for, the one that would be available in spring, was, according to Nadia, too expensive now. They had found something better, she said. But the neighborhood wasn't right. Brandon had been passed over for a promotion and the timing was just terrible. The timing was always just terrible. I started to notice other things. My good olive oil disappeared. Not the regular stuff, my nice Sicilian olive oil I had been using for 15 years. Gone. Nadia had used it to deep fry something, she said. It wasn't a big deal, she said. My winter electric bill was $60 higher than the year before. Brandon ran the heat at 74 degrees. I had always kept the house at 68. One afternoon I came home from book club and found Nadia's college friends sitting in my kitchen eating leftovers from my refrigerator. A woman I had never met. Sitting in my kitchen, eating my food, while Nadia was upstairs doing her nails. When I said I didn't know she was coming, Nadia looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Mom, she was just in the neighborhood. A person just in the neighborhood does not eat your leftover pot roast. I said, quietly, I would appreciate a heads up next time. Nadia said, Okay, Mom, I'm sorry. But the way she said it, the flat tone, the slight exhale, the way she turned back to her phone, told me she was not sorry. She was irritated. Something shifted in my chest that day. A small thing. But once it shifted, it didn't shift back. The comments started slowly. Mom, did you ever think about repainting this hallway? It feels a little dark. This from Brandon on a random Wednesday while I was trying to get past him to reach the laundry room. I said I liked it the way it was. Have you thought about getting rid of some of this stuff? Nadia asked one afternoon, gesturing at the bookshelves in the living room. The ones that held 40 years of reading, of book club selections, of paperbacks I'd picked up in airport terminals, of hardcovers my late husband had given me. It might make the space feel bigger. I looked at my bookshelves. I looked at my daughter. Those are my books, I said. I know, I just mean it could be more minimal. Like, more modern. I didn't touch the bookshelves, but I started paying attention. 3 days later, Mum, we were thinking we might paint the guest room, like a real space for us, you know? Make it feel a little more ours. Make it feel a little more ours. I thought about that sentence for the rest of the evening. This was my home. I had planted every rose bush. I knew every creak in every floorboard, and my daughter wanted her husband's sectional and her minimalist aesthetic and her overbearing presence to make it feel more theirs. I didn't say any of this. I said I'd think about the room, but I started keeping a notebook. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm a retired librarian. Documentation is in my blood. I started writing down dates, times, what was said, what was done, not because I had a plan, just because I needed somewhere to put what I was feeling that wasn't on my face. The real turn came in January. It was a Thursday. I know because I had just gotten home from my volunteer shift at the library. I go in on Thursdays to help with the children's reading program, and I was tired. I had stopped at the grocery store and picked up things for dinner. I put my bags down on the kitchen counter, and I noticed immediately that the counter was not right. There was a new small appliance on it, an espresso machine, a large one, stainless steel, sitting where my bread box had been. My bread box, which had been in that spot since 1997, was gone. I opened the cabinet under the sink. It was in there. My bread box. Just stuffed under the sink with the cleaning supplies. I stood there for a moment. Then I went and found Nadia in the living room. Where is my bread box? She looked up from her laptop. Oh, Brandon got an espresso machine. It was a great deal, Mum. It was like 40% off. We just needed the counter space. That's my counter, I said. She smiled. I know, but you don't even make espresso. I make coffee just fine. Mum. The smile faded a little. The smile that meant she thought I was being difficult. It's just a bread box. It was my grandmother's bread box. Silence. Oh, she said. I didn't know that. You didn't ask. She said she was sorry and she'd move the espresso machine. She didn't move it. Not for 3 weeks. I moved the bread box back myself eventually and put it on top of the refrigerator, which is where it still is. February. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of my phone ringing. It was Nadia. She and Brandon had gone to Nashville for a long weekend. Her idea, apparently, a birthday trip for Brandon. I hadn't been consulted about this. I had come home Wednesday evening to find a note on the kitchen table. Mom, went to Nashville for Brandon's B-Day. Back Sunday. Henry's food is in the usual spot. Love, N. So I was alone in the house I owned, feeding my dog and trying to watch my television with 4 remotes, while my daughter and son-in-law were in Nashville. At 2 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Nadia. She was using that voice, the tight, bright, careful voice she uses when she's about to ask me for something big. Mum, hey, I'm so sorry to call so late. It's 2 in the morning, I said. I know, Mum. So, we had a situation. Brandon put the hotel on his card, and there was an issue with his card. And they're saying if we don't resolve it by checkout tomorrow, they could. How much? A pause. The room was $600 a night, and we've been here 3 nights, so with the resort fees and the spa and Nadia. How much? $2,200. I sat up in my bed. I turned on my bedside lamp. I looked at my phone for a moment like I was hoping it was a dream. $2,200. A Nashville resort. A birthday trip that I was not asked about, that had not been budgeted for, that was charged to a card that apparently did not have $2,200 of available credit on it. And the solution to this problem was to call me at 2 in the morning. Nadia, I said, you are a grown woman. Mom, I know, but you are 31 years old. Mom, please. Brandon is 34 years old. Mom. Her voice shifted. Tighter now, less careful. We're kind of in a situation here, and I really need you to just help us right now. We can figure out the details later. I want to be honest with you about what I felt in that moment. Because it wasn't just anger. It was something colder than anger. It was the feeling of seeing something clearly for the first time, even though the shape of it had been there for a long time. I thought about the bread box under the sink. I thought about my mother's chair in the garage. I thought about 3 years of keeping my mouth shut and writing things in a notebook and telling myself it was temporary. I thought about how the word temporary had been redefined, quietly and without my permission, to mean indefinite. Mom, are you there? I'm here, I said. So you'll do the transfer? No, I said. I won't. Silence on the line. Mom, call your husband's parents. Call the front desk and explain the situation. Call your boss and ask for an advance. But don't call me at 2 in the morning and expect me to fix a problem you created. I cannot believe you right now. I'm going back to sleep, I said. Good night, Nadia. I hung up. Henry jumped up on the bed. I scratched behind his ears and I lay there in the dark, and I did not feel guilty. That surprised me. I thought I would feel guilty. I didn't. I felt like myself. She called again at 9 the next morning. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was not kind. She said I had embarrassed them. She said I was impossible to deal with. She said that she had come home to help me through everything after her father died. I paused the message on that one and had to take a breath. Because she was 9 years old when her father died. She was a child, and what she had done was grow up in the home I maintained for her, which is not the same as helping me, and that the least I could do was be supportive. I played the voicemail twice. Then I opened my notebook. They came back Sunday evening. Nadia did not speak to me when they got home. Brandon said, "Hey, Louise," on his way to the refrigerator like nothing had happened. I gave it 2 days. On Tuesday, I asked Nadia to sit down with me at the kitchen table. She did, reluctantly, arms folded, the way she used to sit when she was a teenager, and she knew she was in trouble. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I said. "Mom, let me finish. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what is working in this house and what isn't, and I want to be honest with you because I think we have stopped being honest with each other." She looked at the table. "I love you," I said. "You know I love you. But this was supposed to be temporary. And it has been 3 years, and in those 3 years, I've had less and less say over my own home. My things have been moved without my permission. My space has been used without my knowledge. And I was called at 2 in the morning to solve a financial problem that was not my responsibility to solve." "We were in a bad situation," she said. "You have been in a bad situation for 3 years," I said. and every time the solution has involved me. She looked up at that. I am 63 years old, I said. I have lived in this house for 34 years. I planted those rose bushes. I know every creak in those floors, and I need you to understand something. I kept my voice steady. I had practiced this. This is my home, not yours, not Brandon's, mine, and I need it back. Her face changed, not to anger, not yet, to something that looked like surprise, like she had not actually believed I would say this. What does that mean? She said. It means I need you and Brandon to make a plan to move out. Not next year, not when the timing is better. Within 60 days, I will help you with first month's rent if you need it. I will help you move boxes, but I need you to go. Silence. You're kicking me out. I'm asking you to finish what you started 3 years ago, which was building your own life. She pushed back from the table. I watched her walk upstairs. I sat at the kitchen table and I listened to the house around me. The hum of the refrigerator, the sound of Henry's nails on the floor, the particular creak of the third step on the staircase, and I thought about my grandmother's bread box and my mother's chair in the garage. And I thought, enough. The next 2 weeks were not easy. I will not pretend they were. Brandon tried to speak to me once, a kind of low man-to-woman conversation where he explained their finances to me like I had never heard of a mortgage or a credit score. He said they were working towards stability. I said I was glad to hear and that 60 days gave them time to take the next step. He didn't speak to me much after that. Nadia went through a period of not speaking to me, then a period of speaking to me too much, tearful conversations about how she had always felt like she had to manage everything alone, how hard the last few years had been, how she didn't feel supported. I listened. I held her hand. I said, I know it's been hard. I love you, and I need my home back. I did not waver. I had spent enough years wavering. My friend Gwendolyn, who has known me since Nadia was in kindergarten, came over for coffee one afternoon, and I told her everything. She listened quietly. Then she said, Louise, why did you wait so long? I didn't have a good answer. Fear, maybe. The specific fear that belongs to mothers, the fear that if you ask for too much, they'll disappear. The fear that love is conditional on your willingness to keep giving. But here's what I know now, that fear is a lie. The love that requires you to disappear is not the love you think it is. They moved out 47 days later. I know because I marked it on my kitchen calendar. Not meanly. Just, I needed to mark it. Nadia hugged me before she left. It was a real hug, the kind we hadn't had in a while. I'm still mad at you, she said into my shoulder. I know, I said, but I also know you're right. I didn't say anything. I just held on a little longer. Brandon shook my hand at the door. I said I hoped the new apartment was everything they needed. I meant it. When their car was gone, I went to the garage and I brought my mother's chair back inside. I put it exactly where it had always been, in the corner by the window that catches the afternoon light. I sat down in it. Henry immediately jumped into my lap, which he has not been able to do for 3 years because Brandon was always on the couch. I sat there for a long time. Outside, the rose bushes were just starting to come back. The first one, the yellow climber on the east fence, the one I planted the spring after my husband died, had 3 blooms on it. I thought about everything it had taken to get back to that chair. The nights I didn't sleep. The words I swallowed. The notebook full of dates and incidents. The 2 a.m. phone call that finally cracked something open in me that I had been keeping carefully shut for a very long time. I do not regret any of it. Not the yes, when I let them in. Not the no, when I finally said it. What I regret is the years in the middle. The years of small silence. The bread box. The electric bill. The mornings I watched the news on my laptop in my own bedroom so I wouldn't be in the way in my own living room. I am telling you this because I know some of you are in those years right now. The middle years. The years where you are telling yourself it is temporary, it is just family, it is not worth the conflict. I see you. I want you to know your home is your home. Your things are your things. Your peace is yours and no one. Not your child, not their spouse, not anyone who arrived in a moving truck 6 weeks after a wedding has the right to make you a guest in it. You are allowed to ask for your life back. And when you do, when you finally sit down and say the thing you have been not saying, it will feel like putting down something heavy that you did not realize you were carrying. That chair by the window is still there. I am sitting in it right now. And for the first time in 3 years, the house is quiet. I have thought a lot about cause and effect since that night. Not in any mystical sense, just the plain, honest mechanics of it. Every choice I made in those 3 years had a consequence. Every time I swallowed a word that needed to be said, every time I told myself, it's just this once, I was making a decision. And decisions compound. They pile up quietly until one morning you realize you're watching the news on a laptop in your own bedroom because you didn't want to be in the way in your own living room. That's not bad luck. That's not something that happened to me. That's something I participated in. I don't say that to be hard on myself. I say it because I think it matters. The understanding that our silence is never truly neutral. When I let my mother's chair get moved to the garage without saying a word, I told everyone in that house that my things could be moved. When I covered Nadia's credit card payment the week before her wedding and told myself it was a one-time grace, I laid the first brick of something I didn't recognize until it had walls. The 2 a.m. phone call didn't come out of nowhere. It came from 3 years of me showing Nadia and her husband that the answer to their problems was in my house, in my wallet, in my willingness to keep the peace at the cost of my own life. What I had to learn, and I am 63 years old and I am still learning it, is that wisdom is not knowing the right words. It's knowing when the moment has finally arrived to say them. I had the words for years. What I lacked was the willingness to believe I deserved to say them. And that is a harder thing to reckon with than any difficult conversation. There's something that happens to mothers, I think. We get so practiced at holding things together that we forget we are also allowed to put things down. Nadia needed me to hold things together when she was 9 years old and her father was gone and the world had come apart. I did that. I held it. I would do it again without a second thought. But somewhere in the years between then and now, the holding had become a habit she relied on and a reflex I couldn't turn off, even when what I was holding was no longer mine to carry. Letting her go, not away from me, but toward her own life, was the most loving thing I have ever done for her. I believe that. And I believe she is starting to believe it too. The house is quiet now in a way it hasn't been in years. Not an empty quiet. A settled one. The kind that belongs to a person who knows where she is and what she has and what she is not willing to give away again. If you are somewhere in the middle of your own version of this, if you are writing dates in a notebook and telling yourself it is temporary, I want you to hear this. The courage it takes to say the hard thing is the same courage that built your life in the first place. You already have it. You have been using it for decades, just in the wrong direction. Your peace is not a luxury, your home is not a favor, and the people who love you, truly love you, will still be there on the other side of the truth. Nadia called me last Sunday. We talked for an hour. She told me the new apartment has a good kitchen. She sounded like herself again. So did I.